I am Anna Marie, 32 years old, and until recently a senior software engineer at what I thought was my dream company. After 5 dedicated years, I walked away from Tech Dynamics because of what happened that final day. When my director Richard publicly announced, "Do not forget we built you something," in me snapped. He never suspected that I had already documented everything. One email with credit card statements was all it took to bring down their $25 million house of cards. If you have ever faced the choice between loyalty and integrity, this story is for you. Before I continue, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. And if this resonates with you, hit that like and subscribe button as we dive into what really happens behind closed corporate doors. My journey to Tech Dynamics began far from the gleaming glass offices of Silicon Valley. I grew up in a small town outside Detroit, Michigan, where my parents worked in the auto industry until the economic downturn forced them into early retirement. College was never a guarantee for me, but I was determined. I taught myself coding through free online resources, staying up late after my shifts at the local diner and campus bookstore. During my sophomore year at Michigan State, I created a small app that helped students coordinate study groups. Nothing revolutionary, but it worked well enough to catch the attention of a visiting recruiter. That tiny project built during stolen moments between work shifts became my ticket into the industry. After graduation, I received an offer for an entry-level developer position at Tech Dynamics, a startup with big ambitions in the financial technology sector. Their platform promised to revolutionize payment processing for small businesses. The salary was modest, but the potential for growth seemed unlimited. On my first day, Marcus Evans, the CEO, personally welcomed me. Tall, charismatic, and perpetually dressed in expensive suits, he had a way of making everyone feel special. "We do not hire ordinary people," he told me with a confident smile. "I expect extraordinary things from you, Anna Marie." His right-hand man was Richard Calloway, my direct supervisor, and the company director of engineering. Where Marcus was all polished charm, Richard was technical brilliance wrapped in casual arrogance. He wore his MIT education like a badge, casually dropping references to his connections in the industry. "Raw talent," he called me during my introduction to the team. "A diamond we are going to polish." At the time, I took it as a compliment. The first year exceeded all my expectations. I quickly mastered our codebase and identified several inefficiencies in our payment verification system. When I proposed a solution that reduced processing time by 40%, Richard actually listened. The implementation was a success, earning me my first promotion 6 months ahead of schedule. It was during this project that I met Shannon Rodriguez, the only other female engineer on the team. Brilliant and straightforward, she became both mentor and friend. "Watch yourself," she warned me after my promotion celebration. "Success has a way of creating expectations here." I dismissed her concern as typical corporate caution. My second year brought even greater responsibility when I developed a proprietary authentication protocol that became central to our platform. Clients loved its simplicity and security, and internally it became known as the Anna Marie solution. I felt valued, respected, and for the first time in my career, truly confident in my abilities. When Tech Dynamics secured its first major funding round $25 million from venture capital firm Horizon Partners, the entire office erupted in celebration. Marcus called an all-hands meeting, champagne flowed freely, and promises of expansion filled the air. Richard pulled me aside during the party, his arm around my shoulders. "This is just the beginning," he said, eyes bright with ambition. "Your work was instrumental in securing this deal. The investors specifically mentioned your authentication protocol." I believed him completely. Why would I not? The company was growing, my salary had nearly doubled, and I had a small but growing team reporting to me. The future looked brilliant, limited only by how hard we were willing to work. There were tiny red flags, of course. The sudden appearance of excessively expensive office furniture, the company retreat to Hawaii that seemed disproportionate to our actual revenue, the increasing pressure to implement features before they were properly tested. But these seemed like typical growing pains of a successful startup, nothing to worry about. "We are moving at the speed of opportunity," Marcus would say whenever questions arose about our pace or spending. It became something of a company mantra, repeated in meetings and printed on motivational posters throughout the office. By the end of my second year, I had been promoted to senior engineer with a team of 5 developers under my guidance. My authentication protocol had been expanded into a comprehensive security framework that became the backbone of our platform. Clients trusted us with their financial data largely because of systems I had designed and implemented. I believed I had found my professional home, a place where innovation mattered, where my contributions were recognized, and where I could grow into the engineer I had always wanted to become. I was proud to be part of Tech Dynamics, proud of what we were building, proud of what I thought was a culture of excellence and integrity. How wrong I was. The first significant crack in my perfect career appeared during a presentation to Western Financial, a potential client that would double our business overnight. I had spent weeks preparing the technical demonstration, ensuring our platform would shine. 10 minutes before the meeting, Richard casually informed me that he would be handling the presentation himself. "You are too valuable to pull away from development," he explained, taking my carefully prepared notes. "Besides these, executives relate better to someone at director level." I sat silently in the back of the conference room and watched as Richard presented my work as though it had been his concept from inception. The authentication system became our proprietary solution that I developed with my team. My detailed explanations were simplified, sometimes incorrectly, and when technical questions arose, Richard deflected rather than deferring to me. Western Financial signed with us the following week. Richard received a company-wide recognition email from Marcus praising his innovative approach and technical expertise. My name was not mentioned. That evening, Shannon invited me for drinks after work. At a small bar away from our usual company haunts, she listened to my frustration before sharing her own similar experiences. "Last quarter, my optimization of the database architecture saved us nearly $30,000 in server costs," she said, swirling her drink. "Guess who got thanked in the shareholder report, Richard? It is how the game is played here." The next morning, I requested a private meeting with Richard. In his glass-walled office, I carefully explained my concerns about credit for work and the importance of accurate technical representation to clients. Richard leaned back in his custom ergonomic chair expression, shifting between amusement and annoyance. "Anna Marie, this is business, not academia. We do not publish papers with author credits. The company succeeds, we all succeed. Your compensation reflects your value." He gestured toward the bustling office beyond his glass walls. "Besides, everyone knows you are talented. Do you need public validation that badly? I thought you were more professional than that." The conversation left me feeling simultaneously diminished and selfish. Was I overreacting, making demands that would mark me as difficult? I pushed my concerns aside and recommitted to the work itself. 2 weeks later, the company announced a new hire. Jacob Werner, a former investment banker with a reputation for financial prudence, would be joining as our CFO. Unlike the flashy Marcus, or the technically arrogant Richard, Jacob was quiet, methodical, and perpetually concerned with details. His arrival coincided with my assignment to integrate our payment system with several international banking platforms. This project required me to work closely with the finance department, giving me unprecedented visibility into our accounting practices. While examining transaction logs to ensure our system was capturing the correct data, I noticed unusual patterns in certain expense categories. Corporate credit cards showed charges at high-end restaurants in cities where we had no business operations. Luxury retail purchases classified as client gifts and weekend hotel stays with no corresponding business events. When I mentioned these irregularities to my colleague Thomas Bradley, a developer who had joined around the same time as me but had grown particularly close to Richard, he shrugged it off. "Perks of leadership, I guess. Marcus and Richard bring in the money they get to enjoy some of it." Around this time, Richard began assigning my best projects to Thomas. First, it was the mobile application redesign I had been conceptualizing for months, then the blockchain integration I had researched extensively. Each time the explanation was similar: "Thomas has bandwidth right now," or "he has slightly more experience in this particular area." The pattern became impossible to ignore when I found myself excluded from strategic planning meetings despite my senior role. Meetings I had previously attended as a matter of course now happened behind closed doors, with only Richard, Thomas, and a few select others present. Shannon noticed my growing frustration. "They did the same to me last year," she said during our lunch break. "First the projects, then the meetings. I complained to HR, but nothing changed." "Be careful, Anna Marie. I think I am on my way out, and I do not want the same for you." Her prediction proved accurate. 3 weeks later, Shannon was passed over for a team lead position that went to an external hire with half her experience. The following Friday, she submitted her resignation. At her subdued goodbye gathering, Richard spoke glowingly about her contributions while already introducing her replacement. That weekend, Shannon called me. "I have accepted a position at Meridian Systems," she said, sounding more relaxed than I had heard her in months. "They have a few other Tech Dynamics alumni. You should send me your updated resume just in case." I assured her I was fine, that my situation was different. I still believed in the company and my place within it despite the growing evidence that something was fundamentally wrong with our culture. This willful blindness would cost me dearly in the months ahead. As our client base expanded, so did the technical debt in our platform. Features were rushed to production to meet sales promises. Proper testing was sacrificed for speed, and documentation became an afterthought. I raised concerns in our development meetings about sustainability and security risks, only to be told repeatedly that we could clean it up later after the next funding round. The tension between quality and speed created increasingly impossible deadlines. My team and I found ourselves working nights and weekends to maintain standards that management seemed willing to sacrifice. With each deployment, I became more concerned about the fragility of what we were building, but my warnings fell on deaf ears. By the end of my third year, the bright, innovative company I had joined had transformed into something I barely recognized. But the worst was yet to come. My fourth year at Tech Dynamics began with a familiar yet intensifying pattern. While my team regularly logged 60 to 80-hour weeks addressing critical issues in our increasingly unstable platform, Richard took his third extended business development trip in 6 months. His Instagram, visible to all employees who followed him, showed golf courses and yacht parties rather than client meetings. The contrast between leadership lifestyle and engineering reality became impossible to ignore when our main database crashed during a peak processing period. My team and I worked 36 hours straight to restore service, while Marcus sent occasional messages from his ski vacation in Aspen. The day after we resolved the crisis with no acknowledgement of our effort, Shannon reached out. She had been gone nearly 6 months by then. "How are things?" Her message read, the subtext clear between the lines. I responded honestly for the first time, detailing the deteriorating conditions and my growing concerns. Her reply was immediate. "Send me your resume. Today." But I hesitated. Despite everything, I had invested too much of myself in Tech Dynamics to walk away. The authentication system bore my fingerprints. The payment processing architecture was my design. Leaving felt like abandoning my creation to people who did not understand or respect it. That same week, Jacob, the CFO, requested my help with a financial system audit. "We need to verify that transaction records match across all systems," he explained, his typically calm demeanor showing subtle signs of stress. "Your understanding of the data flow is essential." The project gave me access to financial records I would not normally see. While examining payment verification logs, I discovered discrepancies that could not be explained by technical glitches. Several large payments had been directed to consulting companies I had never heard mentioned in any development meeting. When I cross-referenced these with our vendor database, I found minimal documentation, vague service descriptions, and addresses that traced back to residential properties. My suspicions grew when I overheard a heated conversation between Richard and Marcus in the rarely used stairwell. I had stepped in to take a private call when their voices echoed up from the landing below. "The investors are asking too many questions," Marcus was saying, his normally smooth voice tense. "We need to move some of these expenses off the books before the quarterly review." Richard's response chilled me. "Use the development budget. No one questions when software costs run high. We will attribute it to cloud services and additional security implementation." They were hiding expenses, potentially defrauding investors, and planning to use my department as cover. That night I could barely sleep. The next morning I requested a meeting with Marcus to discuss critical platform vulnerabilities. It was the only way to get on his calendar. In his corner office, with its panoramic city view, I carefully outlined the technical debt we had accumulated and the security risks it posed. Without mentioning what I had overheard, I emphasized the need for transparency with clients about our challenges. Marcus listened for approximately 90 seconds before cutting me off. "Anna Marie, this sounds like engineering pessimism. Every successful platform has bugs and issues. Your job is to fix them, not alarm everyone about hypothetical problems." When I persisted, his friendly facade dropped. "I think you are forgetting your place here. We did not build a $25 million company by being cautious. If you cannot handle the pace, perhaps Tech Dynamics is no longer the right fit for you." The threat was clear. Adapt or leave. Keep quiet or be pushed out. The following week, I was removed from the International Banking Integration Project without explanation. My team was reassigned to different projects, and I found myself working on minor feature implementations despite my senior title. Richard began referring to the authentication system as the legacy protocol, suggesting it would soon be replaced. The isolation strategy continued when Thomas was appointed as technical lead for a new initiative that should have fallen under my purview. When I questioned the decision, Richard suggested my emotional reaction to pressure made me unsuitable for leadership roles. The whisper campaign spread quickly. Colleagues who once sought my advice now kept their distance. In meetings, my input was repeatedly interrupted or dismissed. Even my direct reports began bypassing me, taking their questions directly to Richard or Thomas. The stress took a physical toll. I developed insomnia, lost weight, and experienced my first panic attack in the office bathroom after a particularly brutal meeting where Richard criticized my work in front of the entire development team. The confident, innovative engineer I had been was disappearing, replaced by someone constantly on edge, second-guessing every decision. Still, I could not bring myself to leave. Not yet. Not without understanding the full scope of what was happening at Tech Dynamics. If there was fraudulent activity, someone needed to document it. If the platform was as vulnerable as I feared, someone needed to sound the alarm before client data was compromised. I began systematically documenting everything. Each irregular financial transaction, every technical shortcut that compromised security. The discrepancies between what we promised clients and what our system could actually deliver. I stored these records away from company servers using encrypted personal storage that could not be monitored or accessed. My documentation project became a lifeline, restoring purpose to my increasingly marginalized role. If I could not protect the platform through my position, perhaps I could protect it through truth. The breaking point approached when our company announced a major partnership with Global Financial Services, a client 10 times larger than any we had previously secured. The press release boasted about platform capabilities we had not yet built, and performance metrics that had been blatantly inflated. During the all-hands celebration, I watched Marcus and Richard accept congratulations for what amounted to an elaborate deception. The champagne flowed as freely as the false promises, and I realized with startling clarity that I was complicit as long as I remained silent. That evening, while reviewing technical documentation for the global financial integration, I discovered something that removed any remaining doubt. Richard had forged performance test results, claiming our system could handle transaction volumes far beyond its actual capacity. If Global Financial went live with the expected volume, our entire platform would likely collapse. The evidence was undeniable. The company I had helped build, the platform I had poured my talent and time into, was balanced on a foundation of fraud and technical misrepresentation. And the collapse, when it came, would damage not just Tech Dynamics, but every client that had trusted us with their financial operations. I faced the most difficult decision of my professional life: remain silent and complicit, or speak up and face the consequences. The choice would cost me either my integrity or my career, possibly both. The week following the global financial announcement, I discovered something that removed any possibility of looking the other way. While reviewing financial documentation that Jacob had requested for the integration, I found a folder of board presentations that had clearly been edited after delivery. The original versions, time-stamped and stored in our version control system, showed accurate but concerning performance metrics. The edited versions, which matched what had been presented to investors, showed dramatically improved numbers with no technical basis. Even more disturbing were the client contracts. Several contained appendices with ROI projections that we had no way of verifying or delivering. Others included service-level agreements promising uptime and performance guarantees that our system simply could not meet. That same day, I found a draft email from Richard to Marcus discussing the creation of shell companies to distribute consulting fees for services that would never be performed. The intended recipients of these fees were not specified, but the implication was clear. They were siphoning company funds for personal gain. With this evidence secured, I requested an urgent meeting with Richard. Not because I expected him to explain or rectify the situation, but because I needed to confirm my suspicions about how far he would go to protect the fraud. Richard seemed annoyed by my interruption, but agreed to a brief meeting at the end of the day. In his office with the door closed, I laid out my concerns as diplomatically as possible. I avoided direct accusations, framing everything in terms of technical and ethical concerns that could affect the company's long-term viability. His reaction was immediate and revealing. First came dismissal, then anger, and finally, when he realized I had specific examples, thinly veiled threats. "You are making connections that do not exist," he said, his voice cold. "Financial operations are complex. Technical documentation requires interpretation. You are seeing problems where there are only standard business practices." When I mentioned the discrepancies in the board presentations, his expression hardened. "That information is far above your clearance level. Accessing it could be considered a violation of your employment agreement." As I turned to leave, he added the statement that would ultimately crystallize my decision. "Remember who built you, Anna Marie. Your success here was not achieved alone. Your reputation in this industry exists because we created it. That can change very quickly." The next morning, I received an email from HR requesting a meeting to discuss my performance and alignment with company values. Attached was a formal performance improvement plan citing concerns about my communication style, resistance to company direction, and unauthorized access of confidential materials. The PIP was scheduled to last 90 days with weekly reviews and explicit threats of termination if significant improvement was not demonstrated. It was a transparent attempt to build a case for firing me while neutralizing any claims I might make. A classic silencing tactic. I signed the document without protest and returned to my desk, where I found my system access had been restricted. Many of the repositories I had previously managed were now read-only or completely inaccessible. My administrative privileges had been revoked. That afternoon, I sent a meeting request to Jacob. If anyone in leadership might listen, it would be the methodical CFO who seemed genuinely concerned with proper procedure. To my surprise, he accepted for the following morning. In Jacob's minimalist office, with its conspicuous absence of the luxury items that decorated other executive spaces, I carefully outlined what I had found. I avoided emotional language or accusations, sticking to verifiable facts and clear documentation. I did not play the recording of Richard's threat, saving that evidence in case I needed it later. Jacob listened without interruption, his expression giving away nothing. When I finished, he was silent for nearly a full minute before responding. "Anna Marie, these are serious allegations that would require substantial investigation." His tone was measured, professional. "I appreciate you bringing these concerns to my attention, but I need to be extremely careful about how I proceed. Accusations of financial impropriety can destroy careers and companies regardless of whether they are ultimately proven." He promised to look into the matters I had raised, but cautioned me against discussing my concerns with anyone else. "Let me handle this through the proper channels," he insisted. "In the meantime, I suggest focusing on your assigned work and the requirements of your improvement plan." I left his office uncertain whether I had found an ally or simply another company man who would prioritize Tech Dynamics' reputation over the truth. His caution was understandable but frustrating when I knew clients and investors were being actively deceived. The following week brought the final humiliation. During the monthly all-hands meeting, Richard announced a strategic reorganization of the engineering department. My remaining responsibilities were distributed to other team leads, and I was assigned to documentation and legacy system maintenance, effectively a demotion to entry-level work. As Richard detailed the changes, he made direct eye contact with me across the conference room, his message clear: "This is what happens to those who question leadership." The reorganization was presented as an optimization, but everyone understood it as a public diminishment of my role and status. After 2 more weeks of increasing isolation and meaningless assignments, I submitted my resignation, effective 2 weeks from the date of notice. The decision brought both relief and profound sadness. Tech Dynamics had been my professional home for nearly 5 years. I had helped build its core technology. I had believed in its mission. Walking away felt like abandoning a part of myself. HR processed my resignation with suspicious efficiency, waiving the standard 2-week notice period and requesting I leave by the end of the day. As I packed my personal items under the watchful eye of a security contractor, colleagues stopped by with awkward goodbyes and promises to stay in touch that we all knew were unlikely to be kept. Richard arranged a small farewell gathering in the break room, a performative gesture that few attended. Standing before the scattered employees who had shown up out of obligation or curiosity, he delivered the statement that would echo in my mind for months afterward. "We wish Anna Marie the best in her future endeavors," he said with practiced sincerity. "While it is always difficult to see talented team members move on, we must remember that success is built collectively. Talent is shaped by opportunity and mentorship. Then, looking directly at me with a slight smile, he added, "Do not forget we built you. Everything you take forward in your career was developed here under our guidance." The room fell uncomfortably silent. A few colleagues shifted nervously, avoiding eye contact. In that moment, something inside me crystallized. The fear and uncertainty that had paralyzed me for months transformed into absolute clarity. I smiled politely, thanked everyone for the experience, and walked out of Tech Dynamics for the last time, the weight of my encrypted drive in my bag feeling suddenly significant. Richard believed he had won, that I had been successfully neutralized and dismissed. He had no idea what was coming. The weekend after my departure from Tech Dynamics passed in a fog of emotional exhaustion and relief. For the first time in months, I slept without waking in a panic, my subconscious finally understanding that I no longer needed to fight a daily battle for professional survival. But with the relief came uncertainty. What responsibility did I have to expose what I knew? What consequences might I face if I came forward? By Sunday evening, I needed perspective from someone I trusted. I called Eleanor Bennett, my former computer science professor, who had become a mentor over the years. Over video chat, I explained the situation without naming the company, outlining the fraud and misrepresentation I had documented. "The question is not whether you should act, but how," she said after listening patiently. "Remaining silent makes you complicit, but rushing forward without protection could be devastating to your future. This needs to be handled carefully." At her suggestion, I consulted with an attorney specializing in whistleblower cases. The consultation was sobering. While the evidence I had gathered was compelling, coming forward would likely result in legal challenges from Tech Dynamics. My employment agreement contained confidentiality clauses that, while not covering illegal activity, could be used to entangle me in expensive litigation. "Document everything meticulously," the attorney advised. "Focus on facts, avoid speculation, and be prepared for aggressive pushback. Companies rarely respond kindly to those who expose their misconduct." Armed with this guidance, I spent Monday organizing my evidence. I created a detailed timeline of events, cross-referencing each incident with supporting documentation. I cataloged the fraudulent financial statements, the forged technical documentation, the misleading client contracts, and the evidence of fund misappropriation. The most damning evidence came from the company credit card statements I had accessed while working on the payment system integration. They showed a clear pattern of personal expenses, being classified as business costs, luxury vacations, recorded as client meetings, high-end restaurant charges, with no corresponding business purpose, even personal home renovations categorized as office improvements. By Tuesday morning, I had compiled everything into a comprehensive document with hyperlinks to the supporting evidence. The final result was detailed, factual, and undeniable. The question now was who should receive it. Going directly to investors risked immediate legal action from Tech Dynamics. Contacting clients might protect them from future problems, but could be seen as deliberate damage to the company's business relationships. Regulatory agencies would provide the most protection for me as a whistleblower, but their investigations could take months or years, during which more clients could be harmed. After hours of deliberation, I decided Jacob Werner, the CFO, was the appropriate first recipient. As a financial officer, he had fiduciary responsibility to address fraud if presented with clear evidence. His measured response to my earlier concerns suggested he might act with appropriate caution, rather than blind loyalty to Marcus and Richard. I crafted a carefully worded email, professional and factual, explaining that while I had left the company, my ethical obligations compelled me to share evidence of serious financial and technical misrepresentation. I attached only the credit card statements, the most straightforward and undeniable evidence of misconduct, and indicated that additional documentation was available if needed. Before sending it, I reread the email multiple times, weighing every word. This action could not be undone. Once sent, I would be irrevocably committed to whatever consequences followed. With a deep breath, I clicked send at exactly 2:17 p.m. on Wednesday afternoon. Then silence. The rest of Wednesday passed without response. Thursday and Friday followed with no indication that my email had made any impact. I began to wonder if Jacob had simply deleted it without reading, or if he had immediately forwarded it to Marcus and Richard, who decided to ignore it rather than engage. The uncertainty was almost worse than the active hostility I had faced in my final months at the company. Had my evidence been dismissed, Was legal action being prepared against me? Had I risked my professional future for nothing? On Saturday morning, my phone rang with an unknown number. When I answered, I was surprised to hear Thomas Bradley Richards' protege and my effective replacement. "Anna Marie, I am not supposed to be calling you," he began, his voice tense. "But things are happening at the office that you should know about. Jacob called an emergency meeting with the board yesterday. Richard was excluded. No one knows exactly what was discussed, but Richard has been locked out of the system since last night, and security escorted him from the building when he arrived this morning." The news stunned me. "What about Marcus?" "Still here, but there are auditors everywhere. External consultants have been brought in to review the platform architecture. They are asking questions about the authentication system and payment processing that I cannot answer." There was a pause before he added, "I should have listened to you about the technical debt. I am sorry." After hanging up, I sat in silence, processing this unexpected development. Jacob had acted, and decisively. The evidence had been compelling enough to trigger immediate investigation. While the situation was still unfolding, it appeared that at least some accountability might be forthcoming. Sunday brought news alerts about technical difficulties at Tech Dynamics, with reports that several large clients were experiencing service disruptions. The company's stock, which had been trading at record highs following the global financial announcement, dropped 7% in after-hours trading. By Monday morning, financial news sites were reporting unspecified concerns about financial reporting practices at Tech Dynamics, with rumors of an internal audit and potential regulatory investigation. The stock dropped another 12% when markets opened. I watched these developments with a complex mixture of vindication and concern. While the truth was finally emerging, many innocent employees would be affected by the fallout. Former colleagues who had nothing to do with the fraud might lose their jobs, or have their reputations tarnished by association. Throughout the following days, I received messages from various Tech Dynamics employees. Some were angry, blaming me for the company's troubles. Others were supportive, thanking me for exposing problems they had suspected, but felt powerless to address. A few simply wanted information, hoping I could explain what was happening as the company they knew began to unravel. I responded selectively, avoiding any statements that could be construed as celebration or that revealed information beyond what was already becoming public. This was not a victory to celebrate, but a necessary correction with unfortunate collateral damage. By the end of the week, my confidence in my decision had solidified. Difficult as the process had been, remaining silent would have allowed the fraud to continue and eventually harm far more people when the inevitable collapse occurred. Acting when I did might have limited the damage and given the company a chance to reform rather than implode completely. What I could not have anticipated was just how quickly and dramatically that implosion would begin. Exactly 1 week after I sent my email to Jacob, the Tech Dynamics platform experienced a catastrophic failure. According to industry news sites, the system went completely offline for 17 hours, affecting thousands of businesses that relied on its payment processing capabilities. The company issued a terse statement about system maintenance and upgrades, but insiders reported panic at headquarters. The technical failure could not have come at a worse time for Tech Dynamics. With rumors of financial irregularities already circulating, the platform crash confirmed fears about the company's operational stability. Major clients began publicly announcing they were exploring alternative service providers. 3 days after the outage, the Wall Street Journal published an article titled "Questions Mount About Tech Dynamics Financial Practices," describing anonymous sources' concerns about expense reporting and revenue recognition. While the article did not mention fraud directly, it raised enough questions to send the stock price tumbling another 20%. Through former colleagues who remained at the company, I heard about the dramatic confrontation that had occurred in Marcus's office. According to these sources, Jacob had entered with a single printed page, placed it on Marcus's desk without a word, and simply waited. The page reportedly contained a summary of the fraudulent expenses I had documented, with the total highlighted. Marcus had allegedly read the page twice before looking up at Jacob with an expression of cold fury. Without speaking, he had swept everything from his desk in a single violent motion, sending his laptop awards and collection of expensive fountain pens crashing to the floor. The glass paperweight that shattered against the wall narrowly missed Jacob's head. Security had been called. Marcus had been escorted from the building, supposedly for a leave of absence that everyone understood was permanent. Richard had already been gone for days, his company accounts deactivated, his name removed from the leadership page on the website. The board appointed Jacob as interim CEO, with a mandate to restore financial and operational integrity. His first official action was to hire an independent forensic accounting firm to conduct a comprehensive audit of the company's finances. As these events unfolded, I received a text message from a number I did not recognize. "Thank you." Brief and potentially deniable, but the meaning was clear. Jacob was acknowledging my role in exposing the fraud while maintaining professional distance. Former colleagues began reaching out in greater numbers as the situation became public. Their reactions varied widely. Some, like Melissa from my former team, were supportive, but shell-shocked. The office is unrecognizable. Everyone is either updating their resume or trying to figure out if they will still have jobs next week. But you did the right thing. Many of us knew something was wrong but were too afraid to speak up. Others were less charitable. Thomas, after his initial apologetic call, sent an angry email accusing me of deliberately damaging the company out of spite. "You could have addressed this internally," he wrote. "Instead, you chose the nuclear option because Richard hurt your feelings. Hundreds of people might lose their jobs because you could not handle criticism." His response stung but did not surprise me. Thomas had been deeply integrated into Richard's inner circle. His own advancement had partially come at my expense. His anger likely contained elements of fear about his own future and possible complicity. The most unexpected contact came from Shannon, my former colleague who had left months before me. "Just saw the news," her message read. "Having dinner with some Meridian people tonight. Our CTO will be there. Your resume still current." 2 weeks after the platform crash, Tech Dynamics issued a press release announcing a comprehensive restructuring and the permanent appointments of Jacob as CEO and Alexandra Chen, a respected industry veteran, as CTO. The statement acknowledged past lapses in financial oversight and technical governance and committed to rebuilding client trust through transparency and operational excellence. The same day, several news outlets reported that Marcus and Richard were under investigation by the Securities and Exchange Commission for potential securities fraud related to misrepresentations made to investors. Their assets had reportedly been frozen pending the investigation's outcome. Industry reaction was swift and severe. Tech Dynamics' $25 million valuation collapsed to less than $5 million. Global Financial Services publicly canceled their partnership agreement, citing material misrepresentation of platform capabilities. Other major clients followed, creating a mass exodus that threatened the company's survival. For those remaining at Tech Dynamics, including many talented engineers who had built legitimate components of the platform, the future looked uncertain at best. Jacob had reportedly secured emergency funding to maintain operations, while the restructuring proceeded but significant layoffs seemed inevitable. Through all of this, I experienced a complex emotional journey. Vindication came with the confirmation that my concerns had been valid and my actions necessary. The fraud had been real and substantial, the technical misrepresentations as dangerous as I had feared. Without intervention, the collapse would have been even more catastrophic when Global Financial's transaction volume hit the fragile system. Yet there was no triumph in watching former colleagues face professional uncertainty. No satisfaction in seeing a platform I had helped build struggle for survival. The necessary exposure of truth had come with collateral damage that affected many innocent people. There was also the personal toll to consider. While I had received interest from several companies, including Meridian, where Shannon now worked, many recruiters became noticeably cooler when they realized I was that engineer from Tech Dynamics. Whistleblowing, even when justified, carries stigma in an industry where loyalty is often valued above integrity. Jacob called me directly about a month after the initial exposure. Our conversation was brief but significant. "The board has been briefed on the full extent of the financial misrepresentation," he said without preamble when I answered. "The total approaches $7 million over 3 years. The independent technical audit confirmed that the platform would have catastrophically failed under the global financial volume. Your documentation was instrumental in understanding both issues." "What happens now?" I asked. "Rebuilding if possible. Significant downsizing. Criminal charges are likely for both Marcus and Richard." He paused before adding, "For what it is worth, you saved a lot of people from much worse consequences down the road, including me. I was starting to piece it together, but your evidence accelerated the process by months." His acknowledgement provided a measure of peace. The personal and professional cost had been high, but the alternative, remaining silent while fraud continued, and a fragile system was pushed beyond its breaking point, would have been unbearable. As media coverage of the Tech Dynamics situation continued, I declined all requests for interviews or comments. This had never been about public attention or personal vindication. It was about professional integrity and the responsibility that comes with technical knowledge. Sometimes the most important code you write is the one that sounds an alarm when systems are failing. The final confirmation that I had made the right choice came unexpectedly. A junior developer who had been on my team sent me a simple message. They hired me because of your authentication system. It was the only part that worked properly during the crash. Whatever else happens with the company, that piece will survive. Your work mattered. In the end, that was the vindication that meant the most. Beyond the fraud exposure, beyond the executive departures, my technical contribution had value that stood independent of the corruption around it. In an industry built on code, that was a legacy worth having. The months following the Tech Dynamics implosion were a period of profound personal and professional reconstruction. The experience had fundamentally changed my relationship with my career, forcing me to confront questions about values, purpose, and the true meaning of professional success. Initially, I struggled with unexpected emotional aftermath. Despite knowing I had acted ethically, I experienced persistent anxiety, questioning my decisions and worrying about my professional future. The stress manifested physically in disrupted sleep patterns and tension headaches that no amount of over-the-counter medication seemed to touch. Shannon proved to be an unexpected source of strength during this period. Having navigated her own departure from Tech Dynamics months earlier, she understood the complicated grief that comes with leaving a toxic workplace, especially one where you had invested so much of yourself. "You are mourning the company you thought you were building," she explained during one of our regular coffee meetings. "The vision you believed in never actually existed, but your grief for it is still real." 3 months after leaving Tech Dynamics, I accepted a position at Meridian Systems, a smaller but ethically managed company developing supply chain management software. The role offered less prestige and lower compensation than my senior position at Tech Dynamics, but it came with something far more valuable: leadership that valued transparency and technical integrity. My new manager, Elena Winters, had specifically sought me out after learning of my background. "We need engineers who prioritize doing things right," she told me during the interview. "Technical debt is inevitable, but deliberate deception is not. Your experience gives you perspective that most candidates lack." Gradually, I reconnected with former Tech Dynamics colleagues who had found their way to other companies. These reunions were sometimes awkward, initially shadowed by the shared trauma of the company's collapse, but ultimately healing. We processed together what had happened, acknowledging both the good work we had done and the toxic culture that had undermined it. 6 months after the initial exposure, I received an unexpected email from a journalist at a prominent technology publication. She was working on an in-depth piece about ethics in the financial technology sector and wanted to discuss my experience anonymously. After careful consideration and consultation with an attorney, I agreed to a single interview with strict conditions about anonymity and fact-checking. The resulting article, "When Systems Fail: Ethics and Accountability in Financial Technology," explored the broader industry issues exemplified by the Tech Dynamics case, without directly attributing quotes to me. The article generated significant discussion within the industry. Several companies announced enhanced whistleblower protections and technical governance frameworks in its wake. While these corporate responses might have been partially performative, they suggested a growing recognition of the issues that had led to the Tech Dynamics disaster. 9 months after my departure, the legal consequences for Marcus and Richard became concrete. Both were indicted on multiple counts of wire fraud, securities fraud, and filing false financial statements. The indictment included details that matched my documentation, almost exactly suggesting that my evidence had indeed formed the backbone of the case against them. Jacob contacted me again after the indictments were announced. "They want you to testify," he said without preamble. "The prosecutors. They believe your first-hand account of the technical misrepresentations would be compelling to a jury." The prospect of public testimony was daunting. It would mean abandoning anonymity and potentially facing cross-examination designed to discredit me. After discussion with my attorney, I agreed to provide a deposition, but requested that in person, testimony be used only if absolutely necessary. In preparing for the deposition, I revisited all the documentation I had gathered, reliving the gradual realization of what had been happening at Tech Dynamics. The experience was painful, but clarifying, reinforcing my conviction that speaking up had been not just justified but necessary. The deposition itself was exhausting but ultimately empowering. For 6 hours I answered questions with careful precision, neither embellishing nor minimizing what I had observed. The prosecutors seemed satisfied with my testimony, and my attorney indicated that it strengthened their case significantly. Both Marcus and Richard ultimately accepted plea agreements rather than face trial. The terms included significant financial penalties, and for Marcus a 30-month prison sentence. Richard received 18 months reduced in exchange for cooperation against Marcus. Both were barred from serving as officers or directors of public companies for 10 years. As news of the plea agreement spread through the industry, I received an invitation to speak at a conference on ethical leadership in technology. The organizer, a respected figure in the field, assured me that my perspective would be valuable to others navigating similar ethical challenges. After much consideration, I accepted. My presentation, Technical Integrity in Complex Systems, avoided direct references to Tech Dynamics but drew on the experience to illustrate broader principles. I discussed the responsibility engineers have to maintain technical integrity, even when organizational pressures push toward compromise. The response was overwhelming. Dozens of attendees approached me afterward, sharing their own experiences with ethical challenges and expressing appreciation for the framework I had provided. Several mentioned that they had faced similar situations but lacked the vocabulary or confidence to address them effectively. This positive reception led to invitations to speak at other industry events and eventually to establish a network for technical professionals facing ethical dilemmas. What began as informal mentoring sessions evolved into a structured support system, with resources, legal guidance, and peer connections. Through this work, I connected with others who had made similar difficult choices in various organizations. Their stories reinforced that whistleblowing is rarely dramatic or cinematic. Most often, it is a series of small decisions to maintain integrity, when easier paths are available, culminating in a final choice that cannot be avoided. 2 years after leaving Tech Dynamics, I received a surprising update from Jacob. The company dramatically downsized and refocused had been acquired by a larger financial services firm. Most remarkably, the authentication system I had developed remained at the core of their offering, now properly maintained and documented. "Your work outlasted the fraud," Jacob wrote. "There is a certain justice in that." This news brought unexpected closure. While Tech Dynamics, as I had known it, was gone, something of value had survived. Something I had contributed with genuine intention and skill. The system I had built to protect user data was still doing exactly that, separated now from the corruption that had once surrounded it. As I reflect on the entire experience now, several lessons stand out with particular clarity. True professional value lies not in titles or company prestige, but in the integrity of your work and decisions. The authentication system survived because it was built properly with genuine concern for security and user protection. The fraudulent elements collapsed because they lacked substance. No organization builds you in the way Richard claimed. Skills, judgment, and integrity are developed through experience and choice, not bestowed by corporate entities. His statement revealed more about his own insecurity than any truth about professional development. Speaking truth has costs, but remaining silent exacts a greater price over time. The professional challenges I faced after leaving Tech Dynamics were significant but temporary. The personal cost of remaining complicit would have been permanent. Ethical decisions are rarely black and white, especially in complex technical environments. The hardest choices involve competing values and uncertain outcomes. What matters is maintaining awareness of the principles guiding your decisions. Community is essential for maintaining perspective during ethical challenges. Without Shannon Eleanor and others who provided support and clarity, I might have continued to doubt my perceptions or minimize the problems I was witnessing. Most importantly, I learned that professional identity is distinct from any single company or role. When Richard said, "We built you," he was expressing a fundamental misconception about the relationship between individuals and organizations. We bring our skills, judgment, and integrity to the companies we join. We develop these qualities through experience, including difficult experiences like the one at Tech Dynamics. But they remain ours, not corporate assets to be claimed or controlled. True professional growth comes from navigating challenges with integrity and tact, even when that path leads away from apparent success. It comes from building systems that work as promised, not from association with inflated valuations or executive prestige. Looking back at that final confrontation when Richard publicly claimed credit for my professional development, I now understand the insecurity behind his statement. He needed to believe that my abilities were his creation, because acknowledging my independent value threatened the hierarchy he had constructed. But the truth is simpler and more empowering. We build ourselves through choices large and small, through successes and failures, through standing firm when it would be easier to look away. No company builds us. They merely provide contexts where we can choose to build ourselves or not. If you have ever faced a situation where speaking up seemed impossible, but remaining silent felt unbearable, I hope this story provides some guidance. The path is rarely clear, and never easy, but integrity provides a compass when other indicators fail. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to choose between what was easy and what was right? Did you speak up or stay silent? And how did that choice affect you afterward? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might help someone else facing a similar decision right now. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more stories about navigating complex professional challenges with integrity. And if you know someone who might benefit from this perspective, share it with them. Sometimes knowing we are not alone in these difficult choices makes all the difference. Thank you for listening to my story. May your own professional journey be guided by the knowledge that true success comes not from what others build for you, but from what you choose to build yourself one decision at a time.